Hello, hello, and welcome to the, what month are we? March fruit and veg grow along. So this month we are growing strawberries. Now, you might, if you are a flower grower and you're watching this, you're thinking, well, hang on, they're white strawberries. But yes, we are growing white strawberries. Now, these ones apparently taste a bit pineapple-y. So I've never tried them before. I'm quite excited to grow them. So I hope you are as well. And these ones are actually going to get quite big, the plants, and then obviously they will send out runners as well. So they are going to need quite a bit of space if you're planting them in the ground. Now, you probably noticed that I'm indoors today. It's chucking it down outside, but I am going to plant mine. I want to create like I've got like a big table outside, and I want to create like an edible, scented, like really sensory kind of display in the middle of my big table. So my strawberry plants are gonna form a big part of that. I'm gonna have some other scented plants and some other plants that are really nice to touch. But I really want some edibles in there as well. And I thought, what better to have those lovely white strawberries as something a bit different. So I'm going to be planting mine in this container, which is what I'm going to show you today. And yeah, and then I'm going to talk you through a couple of things as well that I think will help. So the first one is how deep, or one of them is how deep to plant them, to make sure that you get the best fruit possible, and also where you should plant them. So if you're planting them outdoors or if you're putting them in a container, where you want them to be so you get lots of lovely ripe fruit as well. And then the last thing is strawberries are renowned for being eaten by birds and slugs. So I'm going to share a few tips with you of how to stop those pesky pests getting them, basically, so you actually get to eat them, because there's nothing more frustrating than putting all your time and effort into it and then not even getting to eat the berries. So yeah, without further ado then, I'm going to get cracking. So like I said, this is a container here that I'm going to plant mine in, like almost like a little trough thing. I've given it a clean and then I've dirtied it again because I put my crocs in there already and then taken them out. But I used this last year for was it spring onions or maybe beetroot? I think I grew in here. Didn't grow that well, so I'm going to do my beetroot in the ground this year. I just think there wasn't enough root depth, but it will be great for strawberries because they don't need that much space for their roots. Now I'm going to fit 3 plants in here because I'm growing them in a container. They can go slightly closer together, so about sort of 25-30 centimeters. It's probably a bit of a squeeze between, but I'm going to put 3 in because I want them to really look like they're really filling the container. So I'm going to start by finding some crocs. So these are bits of broken tile. Now I've deliberately gone for kind of rather flat pieces rather than big stones, because obviously the depth of this container is not huge and I want the strawberries to have lots of room for their roots. The reason we put crocs in is just to aid the drainage. So I could just chuck soil in, but let me just show you here quickly. On the bottom of here, I've got quite small drainage holes, which is pretty standard for these kind of pots. Obviously you can grow bigger ones, but you do want to make sure the soil stays in. So I always just put a few pieces of broken tile into the bottom, and that just kind of stops the soil from kind of plugging those holes and just allows a little bit of space for the water to get away from the plant roots at the base of here. So then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my compost, which I've got in here. I'm thinking, how am I going to lift this? I might lift it up like that. And then it's just a case of getting your hands in the soil. So I advocate gardening without gloves, because there's a bacteria in the soil that's very beneficial for to help you de-stress, but also you get that lovely opportunity to kind of feel the coolness of the soil on your skin, and also take big earthy deep breaths of it as well, and really ground yourself in the moment while you're doing that. So I'm literally just taking this, I'm kind of breaking up any like big clods, and I'm just popping it straight into the container here. I'm using peat-free compost. Hopefully if you've watched the garden planning masterclass, you will know that I advocate for peat-free, as we all should try and use peat-free compost because it's peat-based composts are really damaging for the environment. So where you can, please do buy peat-free. I know last year, obviously, with the boom in everybody getting gardening, it was difficult to get hold of it. But you know, where you can. So all I'm doing here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put in all the soil that I plan to put in here, and then I'm going to kind of dig down and make little holes as if it was in the ground. And there's a reason for that, and that's one of my things that I'm going to talk about, and it's about planting the plants deep. The danger is if you plant them, basically what you want is you want the crown of the plant, which in a minute when I've got the plants out, they're just having a little drink. When I've got them out, I'll show you what the crown is, but you want the crown to sit on the level of the soil. There's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, if you plant it too deep, the crown can get very waterlogged and it can rot and your plant will just struggle. But similarly, or you know, in opposition then, if you don't plant it deep enough, the crown and the plant will just dry out, and again the plant will struggle and you won't get your fruit. So hopefully you can see there I've got quite a good amount of soil now. The reason I'm doing this is if I was to put the plants in and then pour the soil in on top, there's a danger there that I'm going to bury the crown too deep. So this is just a way for me to kind of control the depth. I'm not filling it right up to the top with compost, because when you come to water in the summer, if you were to fill this right up to the top there, you would pour your water on and all the water would just come straight out of the pot and take some of your compost with it, and it wouldn't actually get to where it needs to go, which is the roots of the plant. So purposefully I'm leaving a good 5 centimeters at the top of the pot there, to allow for, there we go, I think that's probably enough, put a little bit there, to allow for space that when you water, the water will sit in this area here, and it will have time to soak into the plants. Right, so now we've got our soil in place. What I'm going to show you now is I've just had my plants soaking in here. Few reasons for this. Obviously, when you got them out, you probably thought, oh God, these look crispy and dry. The way they store strawberries in these big plant suppliers is they effectively kind of almost freeze dry them. So they're really kept really cold, which obviously stunts their growth. But it does mean that obviously, you know, they do get quite dry. So you can see here, these leaves here are pretty crispy. I'm not going to remove any of these. I will in time, but you can see that this plant here is putting on some new growth, and I don't really want to expose, given I'm going to put these outside after I've planted them today, I don't want to expose that new growth to too much of the external environment. So I'm going to leave these crispier looking leaves on for a week or so. And then once I notice that the plant's kind of settling in and starting to grow, I'll snip them off, but I'm just going to leave them for the time being. Now you can see there, the roots are really long on these. And obviously the depth of my pot is not that deep. So it depends where you are planting them. If you're planting in the ground, obviously you can dig a hole as deep as you like. But what I'm actually going to do, and you're looking at my scissors and thinking, what on earth is she going to do? I'm going to snip the roots off here. I'm literally going to snip them like that. There we go, and dispose of that bit. And then you've got kind of quite short roots. But what I want this plant to do, and what I'm going to do in a minute, is I kind of want it to spread out. So I don't want those really long roots because they're just going to go straight down to the base of the plant. I want this plant to sit here and I want it to spread its roots down, yes, but also outwards, so it's got like a really good anchor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of look for the middle here, which I think is about there, and I'm just going to dig a hole, and then I'm just going to sit my plant in. I'm going to kind of splay the roots out a bit to encourage it to go. Oh, I didn't point out the crown, did I? So here we go. So this is the crown here. You can see this kind of papery bit. This is the crown. So the base of the crown is there. So that you want that bit to be sitting on top of the soil. You don't want it to be underneath the soil. So when you're digging in, just make sure then that, like I said, you don't want it to be sticking too high up, because then it is just gonna, the plants will then just dry out. And this is something that you might have to keep an eye on through the season, because as you know, you water and the soil in your container or in the ground moves around, you might need to kind of put a bit more soil around those plants to make sure that they kind of stay protected and not too exposed. I'm just going to move on to the next one here. So if I just chop that one. So again, you can see I've got some crispy old leaves on here, but I have got a couple of nice new leaves as well. So I'm just going to chop there. Now, I know it seems a bit scary to chop the roots, but actually, that will encourage them to start growing. And it will kind of shock the plant a little bit, yes, but it will also encourage the plant to think, oh, right, okay, time to grow now. And it will mean that, you can see there, I'm just trying to make sure that that crown is in the right position. And it will mean that the roots suddenly burst into action and go, oh, right, time to grow. And that probably what you'll notice is the top parts of the plant won't grow that much for the first, few weeks, especially if the weather's cold. Because what will be happening is the roots will be really grounding themselves, and they will be growing and kind of setting up that base network for the rest of the season to enable the plant to really grow well. So actually you can see that leaf there is really black and crispy. I am going to chop that one off there. There we go, chop. So last one then. You're kind of almost fanning it out like a little, I don't know, like a dress on a doll or something. I feel like Arwen would do that with one of her dollies. Right, and there we go. And I'm just popping that one into the hole. I don't think you can see that there. And I'm just making sure that the crown is sat there. And then obviously you're going to want to put your plant label in, and I'm just going to use that water to get all the soil off my hands. And give it a good water. Now, I'm not going to water mine indoors because that will just create all sorts of havoc. My cleaner has literally just been as well, so I don't want to get soil everywhere. So that's how deep you plant them, okay? And you do that whether they're in the ground that you're growing them or whether they're in a container. You can get those lovely strawberry containers. I don't know if you've got one or if you've seen one. They're like almost like a big Greek pot, but they've got little holes at different places all around them, and they are specifically designed to grow strawberries. I'd love to get one, and I will get one day. But what that allows is it allows the strawberries to hang out so they don't kind of come in contact with the soil, which can cause them to rot quickly, but it's got lots of space in the middle for the roots to grow into. So that's why they're so good for growing strawberries. Where am I going to put my pot, or where should you choose to plant? Give them as much sun as you possibly can. That will just mean you'll get more fruit and you'll get more, they'll ripen quicker. It is important, however, though, to try and give them a bit of shelter if you can. So don't put them in an area that's super, super windy, because what that will mean is the bees and other pollinating insects will find it really difficult to actually pollinate the flowers, and therefore you're not going to get as much fruit. So I've got almost like a channel in my garden that is really, really windy, and I had some strawberries in that channel last year, and they just didn't produce as much fruit as I would have liked. So I'm going to move them this year to an area that's slightly more sheltered. Then I want to talk a little bit about pests, because pests are really frustrating when you've put loads of time and effort into growing your plants, and then you think, oh, I've been keeping an eye on that little strawberry for a couple of days now, and I think it's going to be ripe, and you go to pick it and something's munched it. It's really frustrating. So the main kind of pests that we get with strawberries tend to be birds, they love their berries, and slugs. So a couple of ways that you can protect your plants from slugs, first of all. So slugs, you probably hear a lot that you can put kind of like straw in between your strawberry plants, where you can get these like fancy strawberry mats that go around the base of the plant. These are not for slug prevention. They are actually to prevent the fruit from kind of sitting onto the soil and rotting, which can happen with strawberries, because especially if there's a lot of fruit, it's quite heavy and the plant can't kind of hold them up, so they do kind of end up resting on the ground. And whilst these things are a really good idea for that, what they do mean is they give somewhere for the slugs to hide. So if you are going to use straw, or you are going to use those special like strawberry mats, just be really careful and make sure that you check regularly for slugs hiding in amongst them. That is actually a really wonderful mindful activity, is going on a bit of a slug hunt in the morning. Arwen really enjoys doing that with me. It's something fun if you've got little ones, or if you haven't and they're not interested in helping you with that, it's a really lovely thing to do. Take a cup of tea out, go and hunt them. Now, I'm not going to tell you to kill them, because I know not everybody would like to do that, but you can definitely collect them up, take them on a walk with you, and dispose of them far away from your garden, so they don't munch your veg. The next thing then is, if you choose to grow in pots, strawberries grown in pots are slightly protected from slugs, because they're elevated up away from the ground. You can put pots up onto feet, which the slugs, will just provide a challenge for the slug to get up onto the pot. You can also use this stuff, which I find quite good, which is copper tape. It's called copper slug tape. So you put it, if you can see on the picture there, you put it around the neck of the pot, and it's almost got like a serrated edge. I don't know whether the serration thing really adds to it, but it is said that slugs don't like to go across copper. It's because it's a very conducting metal. It like kind of makes them feel funny, so they don't like to go across it. And I think the serration probably doesn't feel particularly pleasant on their underbellies either. So that is an option. An option also that is good is you can buy special collars that go up around plants. So not necessarily the flat ones, but you can have high ones that you can put around plants to protect from slugs. You can make your own out of plastic bottles, just cut the top and the bottom off, and you've got a collar there that the plant can happily grow in, but the slugs get kept out. Something that I've always done, which I find quite useful, and I will put some of this on top of this pot, is using potting grit. So you can see there that these pieces are quite angular, and the slugs don't like to go across it. Because it's not very comfortable on their tummies. So you can buy this from most garden centres. It's just called potting grit, and I tend to put it on the top of most of my pots anyway. Great as a slug deterrent, but also because it will keep if I just pop that on there, it will keep the moisture into the soil rather than just letting it evaporate. And it looks nice. And another thing that it does that's really good is it prevents weed seeds from, or it makes it more difficult for weed seeds to get in and germinate, because weed seeds are all in the air, so they can easily just fly in and germinate. But if there's that level of potting grit on the top, that will just provide that additional barrier. So if you are gardening in pots, definitely get some of that for yourself. You can also use potting grit around your plants in the garden. The only thing to say is generally you would put the potting grit around the base of the plant, which will prevent the slug getting onto the plant. But as I said earlier, because the fruits are quite heavy, they will naturally gravitate towards the soil because they're heavy and weighed down. And therefore, that's your ring of gravel or potting grit is not going to stop the slugs from getting the strawberries that are resting on the ground. So it is a little bit of trial and error. Try one of the things this year, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, you can employ something else before all of your strawberries have gone. Another really good biological control for slugs is something called nematodes. Now, these are basically a little eel which is parasitic to the slugs. So the slugs will eat them and then they will naturally die. It's not painful for the slugs. It's not going to be everybody's choice, but for me personally, it means I don't have to kill them, which I don't particularly like doing. And I feel like it just lets nature take its course in that kind of relationship, natural relationship where the slugs eat the thing, and then it kills them off. And it's a quick death, it's not a horrible death for them. So they are a really good option as well. If you do want to investigate nematodes, if you find that during the growing season you have a real trouble with slugs, basically what you do is you get this little pack and you mix it up into like a load of water, and it makes like a solution, and then you just pour it over the soil. So if you do want some more information on that, I'll put a link in the Facebook group where you can buy nematodes really easily. They just come in the post. It's great. I've used them myself and they did work. The only thing with them is you have to keep doing it. So if you've got a really bad slug problem, I think the initial dosage of the nematodes might last like 6 weeks. So you might need to do it a couple of times during the growing season. You might need to keep reapplying them. But they do work if you have got a real slug problem. And it might be that you have to do a combination of all of these things in order to protect your fruit. The other pest then mainly is birds. Now, there's a few ways that you can stop the birds getting at the strawberries. One of them, which we're already doing, is to grow white strawberries. Apparently the birds don't really touch them, probably because they think they're not ripe when they actually are, because obviously they're waiting for them to turn red and they're never going to turn red. But I've never grown white strawberries, so that would be a really interesting test to see if that actually works. Another thing you can do is net your fruit. Now, if you're growing in pots, that might not be so easy, and certainly depending on if you're growing in the ground, you can get these fancy fruit cages, or you can make one, but that can be quite onerous and quite difficult. So I'm going to show you this, and no judgment because it is like pretty basic, but it does actually work really well. My husband made this for me a few years ago out of pallets, and basically what it is there's a drain, what is it called, like a gutter there that's got holes in the bottom, and this is a part of pallet. So he's basically just screwed, there's one there and one at the bottom, and he screwed the gutter onto the back of here, and then I can plant into there, and the plants have got space to grow. And what's quite nice about this is because this then goes on the wall, so these here just get drilled into the wall, goes against our brick garage, so which is a really nice warm spot, so the strawberries ripen quickly because the heat from the brick building is reflected back. But what's nice is I can put a net over this, and it stops the birds quite so easily getting at my fruit. So that is an option for you if you've got wall space. The only thing about these is they're relatively shallow. So if you're going to buy new guttering to do it, or you're going to get hold of some guttering on like Facebook Marketplace or whatever, try and get guttering as deep as you possibly can, because this particular one is a little bit shallow. So it just means I end up having to keep watering a lot. So I think in time, what I will probably do is get some slightly deeper guttering, which just means I don't have to water quite so much, because obviously strawberries are relatively water hungry as a fruit. So that is an option for you there. Another good option for hanging stuff, which will protect definitely from slugs, maybe not from birds, but again, you could always net them, is hanging baskets. But in my experience, I grew some strawberries in my hanging baskets last year, and the birds didn't even touch them because I think they just weren't really aware that they were there. So hanging baskets are a great option. But again, you do find you quite often have to water them, generally because they're protected by eaves of the house, and also they're a relatively small container, so they will dry out more quickly. So yes, there's a few ideas for you there. I hope that has been useful. Let me know how you get on. I can't wait to see your white strawberries in the summer. But that is all from me, I think. I hope you have a lovely, mindful time planting your plants if you haven't already. And I hope some of the things I've discussed today will mean that you get a lovely harvest and have some great mindful activities to do along the way as well. See you later. Bye.